Good morning, this is Omni View, Episode 7, Balanced News Perspectives. Today is March 3rd, 2026. We'll cover what happened, how different viewpoints frame it, so you can decide for yourself. Iran escalates attacks on U.S. assets in the Middle East as the conflict with the U.S. and Israel enters its fourth day. Let's dive right into that escalating situation in the Middle East, where Iran has launched strikes on America's largest military base in Qatar and the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia. This marks a sharp intensification in the fighting, now in its fourth day, with Israel responding by conducting fresh airstrikes on Tehran and sending ground troops into Lebanon to target Hezbollah forces. Reports from outlets like Mail Online are providing live updates on these developments, including the broader regional fallout. From one angle, conservative voices are praising President Trump's aggressive approach, seeing these actions as a robust defense of U.S. interests in retaliation for the assassination of Iran's supreme leader. On the other hand, progressive perspectives are raising concerns about the legality of the strikes and their long-term consequences, highlighting potential civilian casualties in places like Tehran and Beirut as signs of disproportionate force. International coverage, such as from The Guardian, emphasizes the humanitarian toll and the risks of drawing in allies like Hezbollah, framing the conflict as a source of wider instability. What's interesting here is how the US-Israel alliance is being portrayed. Some see it as a necessary united front, while others worry it could fracture diplomatic ties in the region. One question worth considering: how might these attacks affect diplomatic relations between the U.S. and its Middle Eastern allies? Shifting now to the diplomatic ripples from this conflict, President Trump has publicly criticized UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer over his response to the Iran situation. Trump called Starmer unhelpful and accused him of pandering to certain voters, while expressing fondness for the UK but noting it feels less recognizable these days. This comes amid broader frustration with how allies are handling the escalating tensions, as detailed in reports from Mail Online. Right-leaning outlets are portraying Trump's remarks as a fair critique of weak international leadership, suggesting Starmer's hesitation could undermine unity against Iran. In contrast, left-leaning perspectives view the comments as divisive and potentially harmful to transatlantic relations at a pivotal moment. Centrist takes see this as classic Trump rhetoric, possibly more aimed at his domestic audience, while international reports note how such public disputes might complicate coordinated responses to the crisis. It's fascinating to observe how admiration for Trump's directness clashes with fears of diplomatic fallout in the coverage. A thoughtful question here: how might this affect US-UK cooperation on global issues beyond just the Middle East? Meanwhile, in Europe, Spain has taken a firm stance by denying the U.S. permission to use its military bases for operations against Iran. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has condemned the U.S. and Israeli strikes, including the killing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, reflecting his socialist government's position on the conflict, according to Mail Online. This decision highlights growing tensions within alliances like NATO. European media often frames this as a principled move against escalation, aligning with calls for dialogue and pacifism over military action. US-focused outlets, particularly conservative ones, see it as a betrayal that weakens the coalition effort against Iran. Progressive angles applaud Sanchez for checking unilateral power, while the broader narrative underscores fears of fragmented responses to global threats. What's notable is how this blends respect for national sovereignty with concerns about alliance unity. Something to ponder. What are the potential impacts on NATO unity if other countries follow suit? Staying with the risks from this conflict, an expert has warned that President Trump's decapitation strategy, targeting Iran's military leadership, could leave missiles in the hands of inexperienced operators posing threats to Europe. This follows strikes that eliminated key figures, potentially leading to fanatics launching attacks, as outlined in Mail Online reports. The concern centers on increased unpredictability in Iran's command structure. Security analysts in international coverage describe this as a high-stakes gamble by the U.S., one that might stabilize the region long-term but risks immediate chaos. Conservative viewpoints defend it as effective deterrence against Iranian aggression, emphasizing the weakening of threats. Left-leaning outlets, however, highlight the dangers of unintended consequences like heightened risks to European civilians from erratic missile use. The discussion balances optimism about disrupting Iran's capabilities with alarms over escalating volatility. A key question: how might this affect European defense strategies in the coming weeks? On the humanitarian front, hundreds of Iranians are fleeing across the border into Turkey as U.S. and Israeli strikes persist into the fourth day. Turkish President Erdogan has emphasized securing a ceasefire and opening dialogue as priorities, with reports from France 24 describing the exodus as a direct response to the bombings in places like Tehran. This movement underscores the civilian desperation amid the ongoing violence. Humanitarian-focused coverage portrays this as a tragic result of foreign intervention, stressing the human cost and strain on neighboring countries. Pro-Western sources view it as evidence of instability in Iran's regime under pressure, potentially signaling internal weaknesses. Regional outlets highlight Turkey's role in mediation, while some criticize Erdogan's approach for prioritizing talks over holding parties accountable. It's compelling how the narrative interweaves sympathy for refugees with strategic analyses of migration's broader impacts. One thing to consider: how might this influence Turkey's foreign policy, especially as a mediator in the region? Turning to domestic U.S. news, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is facing a Senate hearing today amid the ongoing DHS shutdown, now in its third week. This follows calls for her resignation, firing, or impeachment related to the Minneapolis shootings, with lawmakers demanding accountability, as covered by Fox News. The grilling comes at a time when the shutdown is already heightening tensions in government operations. Conservative coverage defends Noem as caught in bureaucratic overreach during the shutdown, portraying the hearing as potentially unfair scrutiny. Liberals, on the other hand, push for thorough examination of perceived failures in domestic security handling. Centrist outlets focus on the wider implications for government functionality, debating whether the process is politically motivated or essential for reform. What's intriguing is how this integrates partisan divides with calls for broader systemic changes. A question to keep in mind: how is the DHS shutdown impacting public services across the country? In business news tied to the Middle East turmoil, rates for oil supertankers hauling crude from the region to China have skyrocketed over 94% to a record $423.136 per day. This surge follows Iran's pledge to close the Strait of Hormuz, disrupting critical shipping lanes, according to CNBC and Bloomberg reports. An Iranian official even warned of setting fire to ships, adding to market instability. Financial outlets note trader concerns about supply disruptions, with some seeing the rate spike as a short-term bet on quick resolution. Energy experts warn of prolonged chaos if the conflict continues, potentially leading to widespread inflation. Conservative economic views link this to strong U.S. foreign policy as a deterrent, while global perspectives highlight vulnerabilities in energy markets, especially for LNG. The coverage blends optimism for market resilience with fears of broader economic fallout. Something worth asking: how might consumer prices be affected worldwide if these disruptions persist? Before we go, tomorrow, watch for early results from the North Carolina midterm primaries, which could signal trends in competitive Senate and House races amid national events like the Iran conflict. That's Omni View. For full source links and more context, check out today's written briefing on the Omni View summaries page. As always, compare outlets, look for primary documents, and separate what's known from what's assumed. If balanced perspectives are valuable to you, share this with a friend and subscribe wherever you listen. See you tomorrow.
Without taking the dive, we went on vacation. We had a nice time. My doomsday is set.